Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining me as we're closing out our Advent series, God with Us Brings Various Things. We've looked at God with Us brings hope, God with Us brings love, God with Us brings joy, God with Us brings peace, and then for this Christmas Sunday, God with Us brings Jesus Himself. And that is the whole point of it, isn't it? That's the whole point of all of it, is the giving of Christ Jesus for us, to us, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. And we're looking at Mary and Joseph, their journey to Bethlehem, and how Luke has used this. And what we're looking at today is verses 4 and 5. And what you have is there, almost Luke gets this, he wants you to think of David, he wants you to think of him as king, and he talks about the city of David, which is usually thought of as Jerusalem. That's the city of David. But actually, David is brought up in Bethlehem. That's his hometown. And so what Luke is trying to do is tie in this new Davidic king, this descendant of David coming out of Bethlehem where David came out of, and is going to reign, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah and others that the descendant of David would reign, and the angel Gabriel had already talked about that he would reign, sit on the throne of his father David, and of his kingdom there would be no end, and so forth and so on. And so you have this story, this or description of their journey. One, the world scene that's going on. Then you sort of have this national, local scene. It says, and Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. So you narrow it down again. You go from Galilee, which is an area, Galilee of the Gentiles. There is a Jewish section there, but it was understood to be a Gentile area. And then you got from the city of Nazareth, it narrows it down. They went to Judea, and narrows it down again to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. And you're also, the city of David is called Jerusalem, no, Bethlehem, which is the house of bread. And you have also Judea, house of bread and praise, which is what Judah means. And so you have a house of bread and praise. And it's because, and it's interesting that the Son of God that we are to feed upon, and we're tonight, I don't know when you're watching this, but this is our candlelight service at Troy First Baptist Church, and we'll have the Lord's Supper, and that is to feed on Christ, to feed upon Him, and to take Him into us, take His life into us, that gives us life. And that the house of bread, that's where this baby is born. He's laid in a manger, where God said that an ox knows its manger and a donkey knows its master, but Israel has forgotten. What Israel forgot was that they are to draw nourishment and life from feeding upon God, and we are to draw life from feeding upon Jesus Christ. We're to draw our life from Him, and He's there in the manger, and we're to go there to that symbolically and feed there upon Him. So house of bread, and because of that feeding, because of that nourishment, because of that life-giving, taking His life into us, that life that is given to us, the light is the life of men, and that is the light that we take into us should bring praise. As we'll be singing tonight, as we have the Lord's Supper, we'll be singing a candlelight service of communion, and taking the bread and the cup, and celebrating in song, praising. So the house of bread and praise, Bethlehem, Judah, is what that means. And so there's a lot that's going on in these couple of verses. To the city of David was called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, in order to register along with Mary. So you've got Mary and Joseph going. Now, they're always pictured with Mary riding on a donkey. I don't know if that was the case. Maybe it was. I hope it was, because she is very pregnant. She is expecting. In fact, she's going to deliver that night as they get there. And they would have had to journey, as I understand it, Bethlehem and Nazareth are about 70 miles apart. But they would have had to walk about 90 miles by the time they got there. because you couldn't go by air as the crow flies, they say. So they had to meander a little bit to get there. So that's like 90 miles that they had to walk. So I hope that she was riding a donkey or something. I don't know what it would have been. Hopefully they got something, because that would not have been an easy or pleasant trip for her. And some would say, well, why in the world would she go anyway? Well, I can think of a couple of reasons why she would go. One, quite possibly she didn't want to be left behind in Nazareth, where all the gossiping tongues were. They were talking about how she was pregnant before they got married. Now, it says that she was engaged to Joseph, betrothed. And that's more than our engagement. It was a legally binding. It was the first part of the marriage contract, and there was a 1 year period of absent, 1 year period of being away. They didn't cohabitate. They didn't do any of that. At the marriage feast, there's the physical consummation of that in the bridal chamber. But that hadn't happened yet. They hadn't had the marriage feast yet. They've done the contract. They've signed all that. All the money and stuff has been exchanged between families. They're going to do that. And you remember, Joseph was going to divorce her. He was going to put her away quietly. And that's the only way you could break this, is by divorce. You had to get divorced, write a certificate of divorce. And so that's what he was going to do. And then the angel, and I think Gabriel again, though its name is not given, it says, hey, don't be afraid to take Mary, because she's expecting a child by the Holy. This is the Holy Child that is coming. His name is Jesus. He shall save his people from their sin. All that kind of thing. Same thing that was told to Mary. And so he believes this. He accepts this by faith. He accepts this, and they making this journey. So I'm sure she didn't want to listen to that. Second thing, maybe they just wanted to be together. Maybe he didn't want to miss the birth of his child, of this special child. It was his adopted child, and maybe he didn't want to miss that. I'm sure he didn't. But also, we know that in the Syrian province, women were not exempt from registering for the poll tax. They had to do that. So she may have been compelled by law. We do know that was in the Syrian province, and Judea is a part of the Syrian province. We do know that was the case in that province. We also can surmise that maybe she just didn't want to be alone. And then finally, maybe they understood this was God getting them to Bethlehem, because as faithful Jewish people longing for the Messiah, they would have known Micah 5:2 that says the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. Everybody knew that. And so maybe they thought this is how God is going to have this child born in Bethlehem. Where he has to be born. He has to be born there. So you see, again, how God rules and overrules in the lives of people. Where, yes, you have Augustus who says, I'm going to give this edict, I'm going to make everybody's going to know that I am the ruler, and you're going to, because the tax amounted to nothing. It was just a way of saying, you're under Rome's thumb. And then secondly, it was a way of humiliating your conquests. And then it demonstrates that God uses even Augustus to accomplish his purposes. But then you have Mary and Joseph who see the will of God in this, and they're walking faithfully with him, knowing that the Son of God is going to be born in Bethlehem, and seeing that this is how this is going to take place. And they go along knowing the will of God, or believing this is God's will, that we do this so that we can be there. And so they go immediately looking for a place where they can stay. But we'll get to that tomorrow. Anyway, he's going there to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him and was with child. So I think she had to register as well. She is a descendant of David, and in the Syrian province, they had to register. Women had to register. They weren't exempt from that. And so that's why they're there. Now, what I want you to see in that, and what I hope we can all see in that, is that God's will, God's purposes will be accomplished in our lives. So the best thing that we can do is to cooperate with that will. The best thing we can do is go along with that will and try to discern the will of God in our lives. And I think that that what we're going to be talking about tonight is walking in the light that Jesus is, the light that Jesus brings. So that we live in a world of darkness, and in order to walk in that light, we have to follow Jesus Christ, who is the light. But there's another interesting thing, that when John introduces the gospel in the very first chapter, the very first words, which is another creation story. It's the new creation story, that the Word was with God, the Word was God, and He was the light of humanity, and in Him is life. And one of my favorite Bible verses is Psalm 119, 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light to my path. If we're going to live in the light, then we're going to have to follow that light, and that is the living word, Jesus Christ, but also the written word lights our path. So we are to follow Him by following the word. And if we do that, if we live that out, then we'll have light in the midst of darkness. Yes, we live in dark times. We do. No doubt about it. We live in dark times. Dark times, morally, dark times, spiritually, dark times, emotionally. It's just dark times in which we live. But I believe that as believers, we can live in the light. As Israel, when Egypt is plunged into palpable darkness, Israel had light. And we have light. Believers should not be overly concerned. Believers should not be dragged down by these dark times in which we live, because we have the light. We can follow the light. We have the light that is life, and we should be walking in that light and carrying that light to others so that they can see in the midst of darkness, so that they can know the love of God and the light of Jesus Christ. And I pray that for you and for me. And it all is based in God's love, because He loves you so much He gave His only begotten Son, that you could have forgiveness of sin, eternal life, and joy indescribable right here and right now. I pray that that's yours, my friend, because if it is, then you have the shalom of God, the peace of God, because He is the Prince of Peace, and He will give that peace to you. In fact, He says, I give you peace, not as the world gives it, because the world gives it and takes it away. I give it so that you might have peace and have it always. And so I pray that you know the shalom of God. Hey, listen, we're going to tie this up tomorrow and look forward to that. If you don't have anything to do tonight, we would love for you to come and worship with us as we have our candlelight carol and Lord's Supper tonight at 6:30. So if you want to do that, come join us, be my guest at Troy First Baptist. Love for you to be there at 6:30 tonight. God bless you. Until we meet again, may His shalom be with you always. Shalom, my friend.